I know. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, but they're having like a party.
You can take all the notes, and I'll make sure nothing's a better person.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. We're gonna go ahead and first open with the public hearing. Public hearing about proposed resolution directing expenditures for the school flexibility fund. Christine, what do you have for us on that?
Yes, if you recall last year at this time, this is a fund that goes to the homeschool assistance program. We have more money in there than we currently need, and homeschool has everything they need. And so last year we reallocated these funds about $100,000 for unpaid lunch balances, in addition to some other pieces. This year the amount is $75,000, and it is recommended that $10,000 of that goes to unpaid lunch balances, which is a better number than a year ago. So we're glad to report that. And the remainder of the amount will go for professional development around staff payroll and benefits. And it's something that the board, one time a year, we need to move those funds so that we can utilize them in that manner.
Perfect. Do we have any other public input on that resolution? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the public hearing. And I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for tonight. Roll call, please.
Josh Bennett. Here. Tyler Holt.
Here.
Jeff Mosman.
Yep.
Woody Pearson.
Here.
Andrew Ripples.
Here.
And Carter Winter.
Carter. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Tyler in this first. Second. Second, Josh. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda passes. Public forum. I think we have the Gilbert FFA here. Cassaden, the floor is yours.
So I'm Carter Winter, the president of the chapter here,
And I'm Piper Selma, and I'm the future treasurer next year.
and we just came to talk about a few things related to FFA, and thank you guys for your support. So this is a picture of our agribusiness networking night. We did this in the fall, and we prepared dinner for the president of ISU, Wendy Winterstein, the dean of ag, and also Iowa Secretary Mike Knight, and Congressman Randy Feenstra, as well as many other legislators. And this was a great opportunity for us to network with these legislators and hire up people. Another thing we did this fall was the harvest meal for farmers. We did this at the Gilbert Co-op. This is at the networking night, but we did it at the Gilbert Co-op. We had farmers come through. They would get on the scale and then dump their grain. We give them burgers that we grow for them for free, of course, and then they would distribute that amongst their other workers. And we also up with flags around Gilbert for those flight holidays, we put something to those down.
Okay, so we also like to be involved with our community, and one of those ways that we can do that is through the food pantry. So we have a nice big garden out at our FFA farm where we grow tons of produce that we donate there. And we also do this event as a chapter where we get a amount of money per group and we all go and buy items at Fairway and then we take it there and donate it. And then in total hours of community service this year, we had a total of 720 hours as a chapter.
This is just a picture of us grilling for the intermediate. This was this year. We grilled hot dogs. So. This was a check given to us from the co-op. And we work with them for our tech quad, which is located just south of the high school, south of the baseball fields. There's about 15 acres that we get to use. And it's a great opportunity for students who may not go to the farm, and they can kind of be a part of an operation, learn about it. And one last thing, we just want to thank you guys and the community for supporting our FFA chapter and supporting agriculture and student leadership. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
How many members you have?
About 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
May I jump in? Do you mind? So Friday, if I may, Friday I was invited by Mr. Davis to tag along at a supervised experience with 2 of our students. And it was an incredible experience and really spoke to, I think, the work that Mr. Davis and his team and the kids are doing out on their projects. Abby, is it Dees?
Yeah.
Dees, yeah, I'll make sure I said it correctly. Abby Dees' family, and we were out at the sheep farm, and we got to learn all about what they're doing out there and how they're showing sheep and doing incredible things. And so I was so inspired by all that I learned there. And then another wonderful example was Garrett Macbeth and the farming that their family is doing. And we got to go out and tour the different pieces of equipment, and he talked a lot about what they're doing and just was smiling from ear to ear as he shared all that. So it was a real honor to be out there and to see what our kids are doing. And it just reminded me about our kids are so talented in so many different ways. And being a part of FFA is just another example of that. So I wanted to thank Mr. Davis, Mrs. Bassett was there, Mr. Banning was there, and myself, along with the kids and their families, and really showing what a great program we have and how hard you're all working in FFA and really doing great things. So thank you to them.
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting us. And great job. All right, announcements and celebrations. I see some hardware here in the room, so I think we have something to celebrate.
We do. So just to start us off, we've got some wonderful people in the room. We're going to recognize you in just a minute. However, I think it says it best in this video. It's called A Spring to Remember, and it's our story of so many celebrations across the district. So let's take a look, enjoy this, and then we'll celebrate our kids after that.
Eye of the sun. As the sun starts to dip in the background, the young girl will strike a drive down the middle of the fairway. She'll turn to her dad, smile, say, "I hit that just like you." In a backyard not far away, about the same time, the little boy will loudly set the scene to the hundreds of invisible fans in attendance. Connor Ash lines up the penalty kick for the state championship before he sprints towards the soccer ball and blasts it into the back of the net. It will set off a one-boy celebration that lasts until his mom calls him in for supper. The next morning, in the hours before the heat gets so intense that it's hard to breathe, a group of young girls set out on a run around town. Their mission, to be just like Claire, and Sophie, and Kira, and Sarah. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? In just one season, a blip in time that barely lasted 2 months, this generation of Gilbert student athletes not only etched their names into school lore forever, but they also inspired the next generation of kids to be just like them. And just like them, it's pretty special. 2 team state championships, an individual state championship, a relay team state championship, a team state runner-up, pair of third-place team finishes, state, multiple state medals, 7 all-tournament team, and the victories. So many victories. If you're lucky, and we all were, it's a season that occurs once in a lifetime. Different teams in different sports, all focused on one goal, being the best of the best. These kids dedicated themselves to it, probably obsessed with it. And instead of shying away from seemingly impossible expectations, they embraced them. They ran right into the light and grabbed what they felt was rightfully theirs. You did that, kids. You did that. And you should be extremely proud of yourselves. We all are. That girls' 4x800 meter relay team, Claire Starr, Sophia Blake, Kira Anderson, and Sarah Pedersen, lit the fuse in mid-May when it broke the school record and won a Class 3A title by 10 seconds at the state track and field meet. Pedersen won a bronze medal in the 800 and added another medal in the 4x400 meter relay. Anderson wasn't far behind in 5th in that same 2-tour individual circuit of the Blue Oval, and both broke the school record. Other girls with names like Claire Grangenet, Rebecca Schrader, and Laurel Mazarek played their roles as well. And William Watson put the Gilbert Boys program in the spotlight with a pair of medal-winning bronze in the mile and the 2 mile. Cut to 3 days later, and the boys golf team bagged another state trophy. The top of the leaderboard eluded the team for the first time since 2019, but 3rd place is nothing to disregard. For a program that sets standards in the clouds, another Raccoon River Conference trial in the high finish state should be and is applauded. And with 5 of the 6 players back next season, including 6th place finisher Zach Wilson, it's not far-fetched to think the Tigers will be a state title contender again in 2024. And then we get to the girls golfers, arguably the most dominant spring team in any sport. And we're not just talking about here at Gilbert, we're talking about the state team. Seriously, an unbeaten spring for the team. An unbeaten spring for junior Eden Warburg. Just doesn't get any better than that. The Bow was the program's first state championship at 3A meet in Cedar Falls, only 3 days after the boys tournament wrapped up. The Lady Tigers were wire-to-wire leaders, winning by 19 strokes against a field that none stood a chance. Now here's the scary part. That team comes back almost fully intact in 2024. Eden Morvat, University of Nebraska recruit, will go in search of her 3rd individual state gold medal. And it's not far-fetched to say her biggest competition could come from her own household. Twin sisters Ava and Ellen Morvat, Macy Underwood, Josie Dukes, and Haley Lumen, they'll all be back too. The rest of the state just bellowed collective yikes. Head coach Grant Walker is a lucky man. While all this was going on, our esports team was quietly going on its own scintillating spring playing Mario Kart. It took an unbeaten regular season into the state tournament and finished 3rd. For a 2nd-year program under head coach Troy Stout, I say that's a win no matter how. Which brings us to soccer. In 5 days, they're hard to top. If you're a Gilbert fan. 2 teams. 2 state finalists. Only one other school in the state, Behemoth Johnston, could also make that claim. But it wasn't just success. It was how success was achieved. None of us will ever forget the first hat trick by Tyler Holden in the quarterfinals. Or the "are you kidding me" goal with 4 seconds left in the semifinal win over Susan Egan. How about Connor Ash's championship hat trick, capped by the walk-off PK that brought the thunder roaring down from the pro Gilbert crowd as the Tiger Boys celebrated their first ever state soccer title. From beginning to end, it's a movie script. And girls, you captivated our minds and hearts equally on your way to a state runner-up finish. Shutouts in the opening 2 rounds, highlighted by Ellie O'Brien streaking down the middle of the pitch as she chased down a perfect pass from Addie Patel to give the team a monumental double overtime win over reigning state champion Des Moines Christian in the semifinal round. And can we all give City Lynch standing ovation? A state golf champion, a state finalist, and an all-tournament team soccer player in a 2-week stretch that will still make her smile when she tells her grandkids all about it someday. If somebody told you these stories, you wouldn't believe them had you not seen them. But you did. We all did. All of those little kids watched in awe too. You better believe they were paying attention. And you are who they now emulate. And isn't that the greatest win of all?
Very cool. Someone here to present? Or I got the whole crew here.
Yeah, let's just have our girls golf champions. If they're here, they want to stand up and be recognized, and the coach, if they want to say anything, and so if you want to stand up and let us say yay for you, and so stand up and be recognized, please.
Hey, Christine, is it okay if they say their names? So we
That'd
can
be
do that?
great, and if the coach wanted to say a few words,
Yeah.
that'd be fine.
Okay.
Sorry, don't do that.
On the last.
Yes, tell us who you are.
City Lunch Senior.
I'm Ava Laura, and myself, Mayor.
I'm here with my senior.
Just there's just going to be a senior. Hello, Laura, my name is Mayor. Please,
And I'm Grant Walker, and this will be going into year 8. Year 8 being the head girls coach. So yeah, I mean, that video pretty much sums up the whole season. It's awesome to see that you can see the look on the faces of all of them when they got to take those pictures with their parents. And I need to make sure to compliment Troy on taking all of those photos that I never see him taking in the background. You know, he does such a good job to capture all those moments because that's stuff that they're going to remember forever. And it's awesome to have that all kind of pieced together and something that they can hang on to for a long time. But as they said in the video, they'll be ready to come back next year and have pretty much the same cast of characters back next year to go and try to win it all again. So we're excited for spring to get here already. So that's, and then again, we just want to thank you because I mean we couldn't do any of this stuff without the support of the school board, the boosters, everybody else. They make our lives a lot easier, and it's just nice to have these girls recognized for their accomplishments this year because they worked really hard and despite some poor coaching, they get pretty well. So it's nice.
Grant, I also say the school board had nothing to do with you girls winning by 19 strokes either, so. Great job, girls. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Awesome year. That was neat. So.
All right, I believe we have some state champs for boys soccer in the back. If you all want to stand up, please, let us give you a round of applause. Want to go down the line, tell us who you are, and then if coach wants to say a few words, that would be incredible.
Sure. I'm Owen Word, I'm Tyler Holmes, and I'm with you. I'm Black Holmes, and I graduated. I'm gonna be a military with this year. I'm Dave Nelson, and I'll be a break. I'm a captain. Gilbert, I just graduated. I'm training for and I'll be a senior. I'm on that, and I'm a junior. All right, I'm gonna be a junior. Can't stay with I'll be a senior. I'm Zach Riley, I'll be a sophomore. I'm the president, and I'll be a sophomore. I'm Gilbert, and it's my volunteer coaching. I also want to extend a thanks to you guys at school board, administration, Ian, Debbie, Troy, everybody that makes being a member of this community special. We have great young men that continue to do great things, and I'm excited to see where the guys that are graduating are going to take themselves and what we do with the team in the future. So thank you again for your support, and yeah.
Congratulations, guys. Pretty darn cool. And we got high expectations for next year.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, go right ahead.
Well, as you can see, we have a few of the trophies here, but in the video, Louise had an amazing spring. And I thanked our soccer team the other day for allowing me to be part of this special journey. But there are so many neat stories here at Gilbert, and this is an amazing community, and it's about our amazing kids. So we are so lucky to have the amazing kids that we do. And I always try to reflect, you know, when you're making decisions, why are we doing this? It's for the kids. And you guys are so awesome, and appreciate you guys letting me watch you this spring. And that video, I don't know, it should come with a trigger warning, because seeing Sydney hug her dad at the end, I swear it makes me cry every time. It makes me think of me and my daughter. So Sydney, I'm glad you guys shared those special moments with your dad. And if for anyone that was at the state soccer final, it was 90% Gilbert fans. And it was so amazing. And the way our boys soccer, if you haven't seen a soccer level at the level they play, it gets a little chippy. And the boys handled themselves with such class and sportsmanship. And for our semifinal wins, we won with 4 seconds left on an own goal. And I think that was a little bit of karma, maybe a little bit, but also because our boys did such a good job with themselves to see, but just the way they handled themselves. And one of the neatest things I'll always remember is when we won in the 8th, so there's so much pressure on our kids because they kept making the kicks. And if we would have missed one kick, we would have lost the match. And they just came up there and they drilled every single kick. And when we won, Connor led the celebration over to our student section. And my job is to students stay in that. And everyone, they ran to the student section. And then the coolest thing I'll never forget is they ran down the sideline. And our players impromptu gave all the high fives to the pro Gilbert crowd. And I just turned around and saw that. And there were little kids there, like 7-year-old kids in their red Gilbert jerseys. And these guys would run past them a high five after this win the state title. It was the coolest thing. So thank you so much, athletes, for letting me be a part of this, and coaches for everything you do, and school board, Dr. T, thank you guys so much.
Awesome.
Thank
Good
you,
job.
Ian. I also just want to mention, you know, thank you to our coaches, to our trainers, you know, and our families that work so hard there's a lot going on at home, and to support their kids in the sports that they're in is wonderful. And our coaches and the time away it takes for them to coach away from their families. We appreciate all of them. Ian and his family, and Debbie Gray, and the time that she takes out of all of our, with the photos that she takes in the sports. It just, the list goes on, but it truly is a community effort. And we had a wonderful pep rally, if you want to call that, when everybody came back, and it was very exciting. And so thank you to everyone for your hard work and dedication. So it's great things for our kids.
It was a great spring. So thank you, everybody, coaches, Ian and Dr. T, you guys are awesome. And again, the school board, I'll repeat, did absolutely nothing for that, but we did all watch. So thank you very much. Moving along here to the Dan Wooden Educator of the Year Award recipients.
Yes.
Want to hit on those?
Sure.
I want to put it out here for a second. You guys don't want to stay for the rest of the board meeting?
Yeah.
We got financials coming up.
Big night for Mr. Walker, he's on the school board agenda for something else.
Oh, geez.
He approved the be a teacher here.
There you go. Okay, just a couple things. At the end of the last day of school, we had our award ceremony. We had many celebrations on that day, but a couple things I wanted to just mention and shout out. One is the Dan Wooden Award was given out to 4 different people, 1 in each building, which was really exciting. The Wooden family came and presented that. Each recipient received a $500 donation to them to utilize in a way that they wanted to use it. And so that went to Sharon Pop from the elementary. Intermediate was Kylie Sanduka. Middle school was Mike Danielson. Mike is here, so wave Mike, in case we don't know who you are. Yeah, thanks, I know, because I want to recognize him. And Vicky Hales. And so one of the things that they mentioned is that Vicky is actually a 2nd-time winner. She also won this award when she worked in Ames. So that was a first for the Wooden group, and they were very excited to share. And we're very, very grateful to that partnership and to the Wooden family for their donation to our staff and recognition of our staff. So they were there, and it was a wonderful event. And then in addition to that, we had the Bob Jensen Teacher of the Year Award, and that was Kendra Brocker, and I think Kendra's here, so there's Kendra. So we want to congratulate her, and so that was really fun to share with everyone, and that is in partnership with the Gilbert Education Foundation, and a donation that was made to the foundation through the in honor of Bob Jensen, which is why we made the award in his honor. His family was very, very excited. And it was wonderful to honor Kendra in that award. So
Not to say thank you for, having that award and recognizing our staff, because I just think it's so, I'm grateful that I get to be in a community that not only supports our staff, but recognizes teachers, and I feel very supported every day, and it's a village, so it's all about it. So I'm very appreciative of that award and the recognition our district is.
and not to put you on the spot, Kendra, but I believe it was $1,000 gift that was given for that award. So I'm not sure
Thank
about
you
that.
very much.
So very good. So
I was able to attend this, and all these award winners were, these are all recommended from the staff members. So each award recipient was recommended from internal staff members. And back to Kendra, they read one of the letters that was about you, and it was really, really cool. So, they read the letters, they don't give the name out, but typically by the end of the letter, you kind of know who it's gonna be, just to get pretty detailed with what they're doing. And the whole event, and I mentioned this before, if you get a chance to go to that year-end celebration, it's really cool. I think Christine does a great job of recognizing the teachers and just kind of going through, from, first-year teachers all the way to 35 years of teaching in the community. And it's just a really cool celebration of what amazing staff we have. So Kendra, congratulations. And again, I just want to thank
Of all the
everybody.
districts I've worked in, this is the most appreciative I feel like our district does for the dollars.
Thank
it's a
you.
great event. So
But
Thank
yeah,
you,
Dr.
Paul.
Shield, great job with the year-end celebration.
thanks. It's always fun to celebrate people, and appreciate all of them. And I will say that. I was trying to think if that was on here, it might have been on a previous agenda. We had quite a few retirements this year, and so it's always hard to see that level of expertise go out the door, but we know that they've earned it, that's well deserved, and it was nice to honor them as well. So.
Administration reports, we saw all the department updates in there. Is there anything you want to hit on at all, Christine?
Sure, really quickly, I just wanted to, some kind of new things. From Carrie's department out of curriculum and instruction, we had all certified staff in an all-day training right after school got out. It was held, we needed a space big enough, so we appreciate the Gilbert Lutheran Church. We got to use their fellowship hall, which held all of us, so that was very nice, and we had a great training on 7 essential habits of his work that brings common language to our school and district as we start that for next year. wanted to point out, if you look at Troy Banning's facts that he gave a little bit about the increase of posts and videos. We've had 13 podcasts that were put out, which came out to be 8 to 9 hours of content. There's a long list there. I hope you'll take a look at that because we're really grateful to all of the information that's going out.
And the new app is out too.
Yes.
It's much, much better.
Yes, it's good. That is correct. I would agree with that. In the technology department, we're reviewing our cybersecurity policies and updating our phone system. So we're looking forward to that. Jason's taking care of that for us. Under HR, I wanted to just mention that we've hired 17 new teachers already for next year. So we're ready to go there. And interesting fun fact is we've retained 16 out of our 17 teachers that were hired last year. So I thought that was a real compliment to our leaders, our principals, and to our staff, because that shows just how we're all collaborating and helping people feel supported, so they want to stick around. In food services, we received a grant here under fresh produce, and I think you'll see it next month. We also just received word that there's also a grant that came through for I believe it's a special piece of equipment for the kitchen at the elementary. It's I think about a $15,000 grant that'll be coming forward. So we're excited about that. And of course, as you know, our grounds and maintenance are very busy in the summertime, as well as we already saw from athletics, and of course, Gail's always busy in the finance department. But those are just some key highlights that I wanted to share with you on the department, for the departments.
All right, board reports. City of Gilbert, June 5th council meeting report. I believe you and Tyler, you went to that? You attend that meeting or no? Christine, you attended that meeting, didn't you?
Oh, the city
I would say, yeah,
City of Gilbert. So
just a quick update. We just shared where we are with the facilities plan with the city of Gilbert. And there were, they didn't have really any questions, but I believe that they were happy to get the information. That's how I would categorize it.
Anything else from your end, Tyler, on that?
No, we brought up the Second Street, so I mean, that's the main topic to try to get that moving forward. I don't know that there was any further information on it. They very much appreciated Christine's update.
2024 IESB legislative priorities. We do not have to pick 5 as a board this month, but our next meeting, we will have to pick 5 priorities that we feel Gilbert School wants to make a priority from the state level. You will see the handout in your folder there. Again, there's like 20 resolutions, I believe, starting on page, I don't even know what page this is, but page 15. So we'll have to pick 5. We'll vote on 5 next board meeting. So maybe start going through those. We'll talk about the top 5 priorities from our district. We'll vote on them, and then we'll submit them to IASB.
Andrew, can we just pop back under board reports under the city of Gilbert and the
Yeah.
hours?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I just think it's
Sorry about
important.
that.
That's okay. I just think it's important. Everybody has this in their packet. But the question was asked about, Tyler had mentioned Second Street, and could, we've had conversations with the city, could Gilbert schools pay for Second Street to be paved all the way across the city? So we asked that question to ours, and this was the answer. My interpretation of the answer is that if it is an improvement to next to or adjacent to what we're trying to improve upon, then we can do a portion of that, but we're not able to pay for an entire road that would go across. It would have to be a team effort, if you will. And so that's how I see that, and that's what we heard from our attorneys and their guidance. So I just want to bring that to everyone's attention.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Important to mention, I thought.
23-24 board meeting schedule. Again, that's attached in your folders. It's going to be again the second Monday of every month, same time, same place. Anything stand out from a date on there that we need to discuss or change? If not, I'm going to go ahead and move right along to the Piper Sandler Iowa election changes letter. We discussed this last board meeting, but pretty much says that all bonds now need to be voted voted on in the November election. That pretty much sums up that 2-page letter that's in our folders. So again, any bond that we need to send forth to the public needs to be done during the November election. Anything else I'm missing on that, Christine?
No, that's new. In the past, you remember, we talked about September, we talked about March, and now, with new legislation that's come out, it is now November.
All right, 23 school board elections are November 7th of 2023. Candidates can begin filing on August 28th, which is a Monday. Thursday, September 21st is the deadline to have your filing in by 5 p.m. Again, September 21st. We have 3 4 terms that are coming up. The term will be from the 2023 to 2027. That is myself, Tyler, and Jeff. And we also have a 2-year vacancy, which is Melissa's, which will come up as well. So we'll have 4 board chairs come up during the November election of this year. So.
Maybe you only want that.
Good luck, Josh.
It's me and you, Josh.
Yeah, right. So again, I mean, anybody out there has any interest in running for the board, speak to Christine, any of us on the board, anybody else. But again, we will have 4 openings coming through here in November. So.
And we will be posting, as those dates come along, what people need to do, and so if they are interested, they can talk to, where do they go? So that, if they want to get signatures, what they need to do for that, we'll have all that information on our website, as well as on social media.
All right, hot topic of the night, facilities. I believe we have CMBA online. And then I also was gonna jump right into Travis too, to talk about some financing options. So I say, let's just dive right in. CMBA, you there?
Courtney. I think
Hi.
She's also, she's playing, double duty there, I think, so she's there, I think. Can you
Yes.
can you hear us, Courtney?
I can hear you guys. Yes, thank you. I'm yeah, on kid activities tonight as well. So
Switching things around.
can you guys hear me?
Courtney had a.
Yeah, Travis, just go ahead. Let's talk about the money
So
first.
let me just preface all this. So we have, we met together, CMBA, Travis and his team, Gail, myself. I'm not sure. Oh, Beth from Allers was on our team to kind of talk about where are we? So if you remember last time when we all were together, we basically said, you know, this is the plan we want to go with as far as facilities. But a couple questions that were still on the table is, one was, should the elementary fall in phase 1, or should the elementary fall later? And so we had that conversation, and I think Travis is going to share some of that. I know some of you had questions for Travis. Also, I know there's some conversation about what about different pieces of land and what that looks like. So Courtney's here. If we have questions around the facilities, she can hop in when she can. Travis and his team is here to answer any of those questions, and is going to speak to some of the documents that we have, and they have a proposal for what the finances will look like, depending on what we know. So Travis.
Did you guys all get this kind of finance? Does anybody want a paper copy? All fine with me throwing this at the fire.
You got extras, pass them around.
Yeah, I'll take it. You got it about. Yeah.
You've already killed the tree, you might as well.
I killed it already.
This is in your packet, but sometimes it's a whole lot easier. Thank you.
Yeah, you can take your own chicken scratches on the tables.
Thank you.
So a big decision maker tonight, all right, so. Okay.
So in our work together, when we worked with Travis,
Got it somewhere.
say, what projects can come out of what funds? Because if you recall, when we have the petition come forward, we have to be very specific about what happens with what funding. And so that's where we are tonight, is we're hoping that with Travis's additional information, we'll be able to make a decision around the finances and the plan as it relates to the phases.
Yeah, so you guys have seen this document before a couple times. The first 2 pages are really left unchanged from the last time that you saw this document. What we did do is really take this financing component summary from the front, and then we. Basically, what I'll say is we kind of created it like 3D model, right? So let's look at this one angle of it, which would be this summary of financing components. So the way that we're looking at this in your phases is you'll have voted GO bond components in both phases. So therefore, in any of our language on the bond referendum, you will need to have things that you're spending money on from GO bonds in both phases, right? So this is shown on the front, but it's, scrunched down a little bit. And then you've got a couple other financing buckets. That first other financing bucket is save bonds, which is statewide sales tax. So your state penny dollars, so the 1 cent sales tax generates different bonds that we've sequenced in 2 different years. But again, covering both phases, some in phase 1, some in phase 2. And then you've got phase 1 and phase 2 with both, cash on hand, as well as some investment earnings. You can see the bulk of that really in phase 1. You built up a fund balance that, frankly, it doesn't make sense to leave a $5 million balance in your bank and then go borrow that money only to put it into the next phase. So this is kind of the detail on how all the financing components come together. Arriving at that 54.75 million of total projects, really what we're outlining over the next, let's call it 5 to 6 years. So this would be kind of one way of looking at those components, and it's just expanding on that table on the first page. So I just thought it would be helpful to see how we're seeing the sequencing come through for the district. And the next component, what is Exhibit C, then was attempting to take what we've been given for some various costing numbers and then assign those to phases and assign those to also resources. Now, this is the part where I can put this on paper, but this is really, especially the phase 1, phase 2. That's you guys. That's not us. We can kind of align the buckets to make it work. And that's sort of what's been done with CMBA's input on trying to get those buckets to align, 37.7 million, 17.05 million. It doesn't quite align exactly with, my numbers for phase 1, phase 2 on the front, but it's fairly close. Right, if I'm showing you a little bit more in phase 1 on the back than phase 1 projects, so there's a $500,000 difference there. Well, hang on to a $500,000 of the cash that I'm showing in phase 1 and move it to phase 2. Right, fairly simplified approach there. The things that I would kind of give you some leeway to is, given some of the recent information, you might even have a little bit more room to slide some things to phase 1. Provided that it's possible we need to slide them to a 1B, because some of these sequencing of those dollars, if you were to go to, for example, on Exhibit B, you can see I've got GO bonds sold in 24, 25, and 26. Well, that means you can't bid all the projects in the summer of 24 and finish them up in the fall of 25. Because I have money coming to the district in phase 1 in 2026. So there is some sequencing that, perhaps phase 1 is split into 2. But I do think when I looked at kind of stressing the model, you could probably push maybe up to 39 million over into phase 1, provided that that some of that we may have to move back, because the concept here isn't that I can roll into this and say, hey, we have all this bonding capacity next summer, so just go bid 37.7 million without regards to what's going to happen with your growth levels. So we talked very specifically with Allers and CMBA about how we could sequence these projects and when we might actually be the guy saying thumbs up, go bid, thumbs sideways, you need to wait till we get some assumptions, or thumbs down, you need to move this back a couple of years based on assumptions. So there's going to be a little bit more of a kind of a push and pull and stay in contact with when you can bid the phases. What we're trying to do is get as many projects as you can move forward in perhaps today's dollars than dollars that are 5 years later impacted by inflation. At least that's what everybody would have wished could have happened 3 years ago. So we're kind of building that model with that in mind, that bidding projects today hopefully is cheaper than bidding them in the future, and ignoring what everybody thinks politically about could happen in the next year. Like, let's just set the next year aside, because I think there's some economic things going on. Everybody good on the timing before I start hitting on how we would allocate?
When you talk about assumptions, can you name some of those?
Yeah, they're all on the front here. So the biggest assumptions that we see coming through are going to be hitting valuation growth numbers. The bulk of your projects right now are dependent on voted general obligation bonds. And we have a growth rate on your taxable valuations at about 67% of your average, or about 4.7%. Now, you'd say, hey, over the 10-year period of time, no big deal on that assumption. Over a 5-year period of time, you got to hit it every 5 years. So it's not that you could just say, well, we missed it 1 year, but over the course of the next 6 to 10 will be fine. No, this will impact your total resources available. So it might be that when we get into phase 2, what we thought was we were going to be able to sell voted GO bonds in 2028 at 4 million. We might only be able to do 3 million that year and have to come back with another million in 2029. And that's where I said earlier that we might be the person saying thumbs up bid, thumbs sideways wait, or thumbs down delay. And so we might, I would say we're the holder of the purse strings there, but we'll be giving guidance on how those assumptions come true. Now, if you thought you could just take this plan of finance, adopt it, put it in a file drawer somewhere and follow through on it, you're gonna do this exactly each year over the next 5 years, just how I played this out, it's not gonna happen that way, right? We're gonna have to revisit each year as assumptions. So what we've tried to do is be sufficiently conservative without being overly conservative, where we're holding you back from giving the green light on good projects for the district, because we're being more conservative than we should be. And, Tyler's been on the board long enough to know that when we went back into the high school project, you guys hit a windfall that all of our financial models were built with interest rates that were 5.5%, because that's where rates were. And then rates dropped to 3%. So guess what? Your capacity now made it so that with that payment, since less is going to interest, you could do more projects. So therefore, you got your, what I think it was your locker rooms onto the stadium about 5 years sooner than we thought was going to happen. I mean, literally put an addition onto the high school while it's still being punchless. So, that works both ways, right? If you start hitting big growth numbers, some of these projects that we're saying you need to wait, we might say, if you think you want to bid them now, you might have the capacity to move a little bit. So that will work both ways, but we try not to make it so conservative that all the answers are, hey, do projects soon. So that's one big growth rate. The other big growth rate we're looking at is what I'll call an assessed valuation assumption, 4% growth. You're going to hit 96% of your debt limit in July of 2027, the way this is sequenced. That is probably the one that we're going to be watching most closely. In terms of do we have the levy to borrow? We've got some interim financing things we can do to fix that. We don't have any interim workarounds on the debt component. So that's going to be the biggest thing that's going to hold you back or allow you to accelerate projects. I think the other thing that I would say, if we start to see sales tax revenues fall off considerably, that could be a risk, but we're also not, we don't have you leveraging your sales tax. So in my mind, the biggest constraint we're worried about is that assessed value assumption. Everything else I think is really, I won't say conservative, but it's right in line with a normal set of expectations. Does that help, Jeff? I know that's a little.
Yeah, yeah, that's.
So if there's not any other further questions, I'm gonna talk philosophically about kind of the way this is going to play out, I think. with-
Hang on, are you
Yeah.
able to use your save 100% for debt service?
You can use up to 78% of your revenues. Yep. And we are sitting at, did we put that in here? We have it, we can get you to, we're not at your full amount though of revenues. We do have the district having set asides for yearly ongoing expenses, so buses, transportation, technology, maintenance. And then we also have a $800,000 chunk for kind of pay-as-you-go projects set aside in addition to new debt payments. So that's what's outlined on page 2. How you have the ability to make your existing payments, do the yearlies, the pay-as-you-goes, and then hit the new debt payments, highlighted in blue, along with the cash contributions. And still stay above $2.5 million on cumulative balance in your sales tax level. So again, I want to say we're putting together what I'll call an aggressive financing scenario. There's still some wiggle room that you guys have, like, well, you know what, our project bids are coming in a little bit over budget, so maybe instead of taking on these 2 summer projects, we're gonna have to kick them back a couple of years, so we have $1 million extra to throw at our current projects that we're bidding, right? So there's some avenues in which you can flex this. Go ahead, Tyler.
So it's a question, we've not done it before, but if we were to lease facilities, and Christine, you brought this up, but do we have some clarity? Does that go against our debt limit?
In most cases now, with the way that it's set up, any sort of lease purchase option is going to count against your debt limit.
So that it would have to be set up as a lease purchase, not just a lease, or? do we-
Yeah, there's very few. Go ahead. I think Beth,
can
yeah,
help
so Beth
with
is.
that. Beth is from Allers, and so she is one of our experts that can speak to that. So go ahead, Beth.
So it really depends on how the terms of the deal are structured, quite frankly. Most leases are going to be lease purchases. And those are debt. They do count against your constitutional debt limit. So we would include those in the calculations. I know Gail and Christine have been very careful about phone equipment, computers, making sure we're not including those as debt. I know that when you're talking about, I guess I'll just put out on the table, you're talking about district administration center and perhaps building on land and leasing that back, if you will. You got another issue there because that might have to be competitively bid, the construction of that building. And then there's a statute that says you'd have to probably count it as debt. So it just really depends on the terms of the agreement. If there's any portion, if there's any way you're going to own that building at the end of the lease term, it's going to be counted as debt.
That makes sense. But Beth, then just to clarify, if it were just a straight out lease, 5-year.
If you were to lease, if you were just to rent, and you'd have no obligation to own it, buy the building, or otherwise improve it, then no, it would not count against your constitutional debt limit. But I mean, I have districts that do, Urbandale, for example, they truly lease space in an office, a strip mall for their admin center.
Great, thank you.
But you would have, just be careful, because since they did that, there was a statute enacted in 2018 that was amended that said if you are going to lease space, but you're committing governmental funds to build it or use it, you have to competitively bid the construction of that building. So it kind of adds another layer on. It's not undoable. It's just, you have to be careful. There's a few more hoops to jump through now.
Yes, but just to clarify, so if XYZ builders decided we're gonna build this space for the school district and they're going to lease it, just a straight lease, they could be subject to bidding laws if they're the sole tenant primarily, or if they're the majority tenant.
Perhaps, yes.
Okay.
Just depends on the terms.
Yeah. In other words, have your
Bad
lawyers
facts
review
or
the
make
documents.
bad law for us.
But if they build it knowing that we're gonna move out. There's no commitment to own it. That's just them knowing, you know, watching public meetings and saying, I'm gonna build a building that looks like a school administration building.
And you exit it with no long-term commitment or commitment to purchase, they're taking on a little bit more risk than they are if you got a lease purchase scenario.
Yeah.
But the lease purchase scenario really doesn't gain you anything anymore.
Right.
There used to be some options in Iowa, again, pre-18, where you had the ability to do lease purchase. Allowed a specific contract with the builder to build to specs. Then you could lease purchase to own it, and I would say it was a workaround to competitive bidding, but it acted a little bit like a workaround to competitive bidding, because you could kind of select your contractor with that. So we saw some of that take place. That quote unquote loophole was closed. And it's no longer accessible. It was used primarily by cities previously, and not really by school districts.
So if I were to recap, anything that would be leased to own really doesn't give us any advantage, because it doesn't free up our cap.
On debt limit, yeah.
On debt
Correct.
limit, but a straight lease, we would need to get the clarity, but that could provide an opportunity there. Against the debt.
Yep.
debt limit.
And again, I'm feeling like we're a little bit less constrained on the debt limit, especially if these April 1 assessed values come true. You might have a little less pressure there. The thing I just kind of reiterate for public is those assessed values don't necessarily turn into your tax bills, right? There's still a process for those to have gone through a rollback scenario at the state level. So if your assessed values went up 20%, that doesn't necessarily mean your tax bill is going up 20% next year. And that's all those valuations from April impact fiscal 25 taxes. So your first tax payment in September of 24 and March of 25 will be the first year that those valuations come into play. And they'll be taxable values, not be assessed. So there's two values that are important in Iowa school finance.
So one more question.
Yeah.
If I may, Travis, and maybe Beth or somebody else would handle it, but the language for the bond, let's say for the GO bond. I'm trying to remember, is that exclusive or how is that written? For example, if we put something in there that then we don't do. Or how do we approach that list that we may be going out in order to build based on the GO bond?
Yeah, so I know Beth would want to weigh in here on the language thing. So, but
Okay.
before we go there, let's go to this
Perfect.
total box, and then I'll let Beth give some guidance on that.
Great.
Because I just have a couple things that are pertinent here. Now, I am just, I'll say, willy-nilly allocated between the three sources. You guys can reallocate, and that's where I think, this exhibit C doesn't probably live past now. But a couple things to think about. We need GO bonds in phase 1 and phase 2. We need sales tax bonds in phase 1 and phase 2. And your cash can really be applied anywhere throughout the process. And in particular, it might be used to take on things that maybe you're like, this is, this restroom renovation. Let's just throw cash at it. Like, you don't need to have, it's a priority project and something you want to do, but does it really need to be tied into a financial resource that's going to be voted on, or you're going to hold a public hearing on sales tax? Then probably not. That's why I threw it in the cash bucket. There may be some other things that also fall under that purview, like the administration center, the transportation hub. Maybe we allocate some dollars within cash, and then if we decide, hey, let's actually just do those different. Maybe it is a straight operating lease. That's why I put those in the cash bucket. So in my mind, you need things that are on the voted ballot, GO bonds, And you need things that you're gonna hold public hearing for with sales tax, which. Again, you know, in that memo, one of the things that we highlighted to folks, and Beth's also been talking to districts about this, is. If there are things that you're gonna do, voted bonds and sales tax bonds, and you're expecting to award a project. You actually need to hold hearings on your sales tax debt this fall. So in addition to calling elections, circulating a petition with bond referendum language, we're also gonna have to make decisions on what things you're going to fund with sales tax. So that we can put those in the authority, so that if by chance you get called for a vote on those things, you can also do those in September. So the language in
Wait,
these
wait,
specific.
Travis. The election is not, for sales tax bonds, that election would have to be held in November. I think, Travis, you said September. If a petition is filed, if you hold the public hearing on the issuance of sales tax bonds, and someone submits a petition to the board requesting an election be held, that election may only be held in November of every year now. So if you want to issue sales tax revenue bonds for projects that are going to start next spring, and you want to sign construction contracts, you need to get that hearing out of the way so that the election can be held in November. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you have to do that by September.
Right.
And then
So to get into Tyler's specific question is, does the language have to be inclusive or exclusive? I can't remember the way you said it. But anything you're going to spend money on, you have to have accurately described in the petition. So that a voter would be able to understand what you're doing, but you don't necessarily say, we're gonna build a 40,000 square foot addition onto the middle school. And it's gonna have 6 science classrooms and 3 special ed areas. You don't have to be that specific, you know, so it's, you know, renovations, equipping, you know, big terms that will show up on the bond referendum. And then your communication obviously would be more specific. Beth, do you have anything to add there?
The only thing I would say is, if you include you have to, the project description has to give the voters a level of substantial certainty that they know the project they're voting upon. So it is not appropriate to put a project in the ballot language and then just say, oh, we don't have enough money, we're not going to do it, because that could be misleading, could be interpreted as misleading the voters. So if you put a project in the ballot question, you need to spend some general obligation dollars on that. So right now, looking at Exhibit C, you're going to build a new elementary building, and you're going to construct an addition and remodel the high school building, is how I would phrase it. If you wanted to put another one in there, like maybe, and construct a secure entrance to the middle school, you could certainly put that in there. You don't have to spend $500,000 of GEO bond money on it, but you have to spend some GEO bond money on it.
Yeah, and I would say the thing that would be the most flexible for you guys is if these are all public priority projects, you're gonna be talking about them all at the same time. So if you say in all of your communication, you know, we're going to do high school science lab locker rooms. And then it doesn't show up on the ballot because I allocated sales tax bonds. That might cause some confusion. So you might actually want to split that 50-50 in this box. You know, a lot of these projects, you might want to split 50-50 in the box. And then, you know, balance out with, well, maybe we put more of the sales tax money towards the primary school. This is maybe a lot more simple to keep both sources flexible, unless there's just something that, hey, we can handle this with our cash. We got $5 million of cash on hand. We can take care of the administration and transportation center. And that's kind of how I threw this down there. That could make some sense. But if you think that, hey, we want to put these out to the voters or put these on the sales tax ballot, you could do it that way as well. But I would view this as, I mean, think about your district's patrons. Like if you put something that you say you're going to do something, but then it doesn't show up on the ballot. You're gonna be communicating about all $54 million of the project at the same time, so. I put this example out here to illustrate that, how that might be confusing, and that how you actually might not wanna do it that way. So we're all ears here, we can allocate the money wherever you want, just know that we're dealing with a $30.3 million bucket, a $19 million bucket, and a $5 million bucket. And all but the $5 million either has to be voted on or have a public hearing. So if you keep those simple and kind of similar, that might actually be easier for your public to understand. But we see districts do it different ways, like this is all personal preference at that point.
That helps a lot, and I guess just put a comment out for the board. I like what Travis just said. The two that I might not put on the bond would be the admin building and the transport hub. Not that we wouldn't do it, but then that gives us more flexibility, because what you just stated is anything we do put on the bond, we better do it, or invest in that.
Yeah, correct.
So that
It
way.
gives you some time to plan, like figure out, do we have better options? Can we research this more?
Exactly.
Both of these were kind of, heavily involved in our city discussions too, so it's
Exactly.
the most fluid
And
or volatile.
And to Christine's point earlier about our meeting with the city, I mean, they're expecting us to share on the street. That's not in here at all.
Correct. Or also, there has been conversation just here and there about if we were to look at needing additional land for something, also not in here at all. This is with our current state.
This is where we could say like, well, what if we just expanded our time horizon by a year? Right, you're gonna get more debt limit and more bonding capacity. And so if those decisions of, hey, we needed to go get land, we needed to go do something else, we needed to add something to it. Those would be the conversations like, well, let's get one more series of voted bonds on this and push the numbers a little bit. And then reserve back, maybe one issue isn't as much sales tax if we don't go forward. I think the main thing Beth will need to know is if there is a land purchase, where is it coming from? Because right now, there's probably sufficient usage or utilization of cash for these land purchases. So if that's the case, then we want to, maybe you don't want to put it in the bond ballot, but make sure we're thinking about, we might have land purchase, so let's keep cash aside for that. But we would need to know if you are going to purchase land, because that is a specific separate call out in the bond ballot. Beth, am I saying that correctly?
That's correct, Travis. Good job.
I get the good job from Beth. You kind of like the 50-50 approach, carving off a couple of things that you maybe don't want on the ballot. If there are things that you say, we just want this to only be sales tax or only be GO bonds, then that's fine too. Just know that it probably does create a little bit more of an accounting headache if we're like, well, we can't spend a GO bond for this, so we need to make certain that we track this separately. I think that's going to be a little bit difficult because you're going to have kind of mixed proceeds in both phases.
And also, Travis, if I may, when you put this together, this came from the conversation we had at our previous meeting. When we looked at, if you remember our last meeting or maybe the one before that, where we had projects that needed to happen before other projects, kind of that phasing approach. So that accommodated for this. I think Courtney's chart was red, yellow, green, or something like that. And then so you took that and put that into this. So this,
Yeah.
okay.
I think the other question you hit on, where you asked earlier, was about just waiting on the elementary. And, I think there's always a case that, well, we might have more bonding capacity in the future, but we're basically on a rampage of trying to, and when I say rampage at the kind of the state level of kind of limiting taxes. And that is eventually going to flow through into your purchasing power for building school infrastructure projects. And so we're starting to see that happen. And really, you can go back to 10 years ago, there was a law change that took, you know, what was normal valuation growth or the limits on valuation growth for ag and residential from 4% down to 3% taxable. So that in itself, 10 years later, means you have 10% less bonding capacity than you did before. Same would be true on the commercial property. Now, I know that doesn't impact you guys as much, but you know, I think those limitations are continual risk, right? So if you say, are all your assumptions on here? Yeah, we do have on there. We don't have a wild card for something that the legislature does that we didn't anticipate, right? So that's why we may need additional flexibility, but you know, I think what we would say is that most districts now at this point have not been able to keep up bonding capacity with cost inflation on projects. And in particular, over the last 2 years, you took an average district across the state, that valuation went up 6%, and then they saw a 20% increase in construction costs. They're gonna wish that they bid that project 2 years ago. Now, that's not prescriptive for what happens in the future, but historically, because of some of the limiting factors that we have in our legislative system right now, it's gonna make it difficult for you to keep up inflation costs. Just because we do have those extra limitations. Now, there may be a year in which it works in your favor, we just haven't had one in quite a while. So I'm hopeful that, you know, our assumptions look good, this plays out how it's built into here. The fact that I'm seeing new PK2 primary school at 25.8, and I think back, well, heck, you built a high school for that, right? Like those are the real numbers. Like that's what we're seeing. You know, PK2 renovations at $20 million. Thinking, when did this happen? Right? We used to. That's a little older than me, not very much, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
It's just, I remember when we could build elementaries for $5 million. Right? Like I remember when you could build gyms for $3 million. Like, you know, all these things, like just they don't happen. So I'm always in favor of looking at your resources and needs now and matching those. If you don't need it now, then don't do it. But if you need it, there's never going to be probably a cheaper time to build it than now. And then what happens with our bonding capacity in Iowa has been another limiting factor that we face. So you can feel free to disagree with my commentary there, but that's kind of my real life. And then we talk about this internally too. It's like, oh darn it, we're just not keeping up. Like when I look at a district in southern Iowa, who's in kind of the lower tier of counties, and they got no debt outstanding, and they can't come forth and build a 912 high school building for bonding capacity. I'm like, something is awry here, right? They don't have any debt outstanding, and they can't even build a high school building. It just tells you that the formulas aren't working in every district state. You guys are fortunate to be blessed with good valuation growth and enrollment. You're able to do better than most, but it's not like we have the Gilbert thing, so we can do whatever we want. Maybe that's true athletically. I don't know. It seems like that must be true athletically. You're still dealt the same deck of cards when it comes to school finance.
Any other questions for Travis? Or comments?
And we did look up, you're at about 70% sales tax utilization of debt payments. Garrett looked up. Not we.
Yeah, we do need to take some action in regards to the phasing approach, right? Now, do we need to get detailed into what's in phase 1 and phase 2 tonight?
Well, I think I think that's where we are if it relates to the funding, so. I think we can always go back, but that starts by doing that, that allows the conversation to begin, and Beth can join in on this, is that to start talking about what a petition would look like if that's where we are. If you have that conversation now, you make a decision now, we can always revisit it in July and say, are we still in that same space? Do we still feel good about that? But yes, the hope is yes, but we want to make sure everybody feels good about the information they have.
So one question on the exhibit C, just in the order of things.
Yep.
The moving of the practice track field to the middle school. It's my understanding that's kind of a first phase need because of then this will be freed up in order to do the intermediate in the second phase.
Correct.
And I see that it's listed in phase 2, or am I reading that right, Travis?
Yep, it is right now.
And also, Josh, I noticed that went back up to 2 million. Jeff had it down to 1 million. Now it's back to 2, so that would be the only one that kind of sticks out to me is
I think we had it at 2. I think it got changed in one conversation or another. I think it had originally been 3 and it got dropped to 2.
I thought Jeff, negotiated down to
I
1.
don't know if I got there.
I don't think he got you down to 1. He's good, but I don't know.
Yeah, so these things come down to the phasing, right? So think about a couple of the things in these phases. And I've already. I mean, I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but I know I ran a phase 1 that I could get you closer to 40.
Yeah.
So just thinking through when you could bid these projects, some of it's gonna be dependent on what your valuations roll into this year. Now, to be clear, our thought process here is that your voters and your sales tax hearing address both phases here all at once. So maybe I'll say the devil will be in the details as you work it out. I think you're within that range if it's just that $2 million slot. But
And with that being what I hear you saying, Travis, is with that being a saved fund, and that potentially could be. A sales tax that could potentially be in phase 1, maybe towards the end of that.
well, that's more debt limit
Okay,
contingent on how much we can get into phase 1.
okay,
But I think we ran a scenario where we could get almost 40 in phase 1.
Well, you talk about a 1B, so to speak. When I think about that, the new administration center, it's not gonna be, or at least, we don't think it'll be connected to another building. So that's gonna be a more simple building to construct. It might not take as long as some of these intermediate. So with these intermediate, addition, with that move into phase 2, because it was initially in phase 1. We aren't as much under the gun on that building, on the admin center.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's where they belong. That's the problem I'm having with all of this. I'm not sure the intermediate and all those on phase 2 are in the correct position. And that's been our conversation. I mean, last week. And it was gonna be our conversation this week because we're pressured at the middle school for classrooms, and we're pressured for the band room, and we're pressured for the gym space. Kind of, you're right about the track. I mean, that's gotta go because of that, but
When you say pressured at the middle school,
we have numbers, numbers.
you're not,
That's not what Mike Danielson will tell you.
we're not, I mean, that's what our enrollment.
Yeah, but that's not what he said. I'm just going by what he said.
I'm going based on our enrollment numbers and our superintendent, and I appreciate Mike supporting going for middle school improvements as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But that's not what the enrollment's at elementary and high school.
Are we not overcrowded on band?
Yes, currently, yes.
And I'm just saying we can't do everything in phase 1. In my opinion.
No, I agree. I mean, you can't do everything because you only have 40 million.
And I would think if we're gonna go to bond, we're asking the public for, obviously, dollars here, you need to make a splash here. In my mind, a splash here is the elementary school. And you gotta come out of the gates, when I look at it, and that's gonna be, yes, we've got a lot of things here listed, there's gonna be a lot of changes, but the number one thing here, which is half of this budget, is a new elementary school. And my opinion is just we gotta lead with that. Because everything in here we need, that's the reason why it's listed on here. But I think you have to, and then everything else is just kind of in regards to the phase approach. You gotta move the admin out eventually. We're gonna start intermediate construction there. We need to get the 6-lane track going, because again, we gotta take that down to add on to intermediate. Yeah. high school, could that wait? Probably could, I guess, too. I mean, I'm not so much on that one, but to me, the elementary school, I think that has to be out of the chute what we started in phase one.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that does come up too is, I mean, if you think about this. Like, I think we have all the construction done in 28. They're not gonna feel like. Maybe it's 29. They're not going to feel like phases are really that separated as much as they are prioritized sequencing as it is. Now, you had to wait for phase two. It's possible that there's, like I said, a 1B that kind of lands between these that, hey, that middle school band, we've got debt limit available earlier. So that becomes part of 1B, and we start that project even earlier. Which could maybe even be the summer of 25, like these. We're not talking that these are that far off, they're just a sequence of when you're gonna be able to bid based on what we know your debt limit is, that makes us. Why we're a little bit conservative on saying, hey, you're gonna construct these in the summer of 27 to the fall of 28, but we might be able to slide them out to the summer of 26.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Well, and if you remember our conversations where we had the previous chart, where we had the phases. And it was, Andrew kind of mentioned it. It was sort of, projects have to happen before other projects need to take place. And one of the things with the middle school band, it's connected to that idea of the gym and the commons. If that comes out of it, might just be the gym. That was kind of, remember our conversation around the gym is nice to have. It's something that would be utilized. Remember that conversation my kids shared about it's something that would be utilized. And so we want to do that at the same time, which is why it's listed there together. And the classrooms would fall within that. It's a separate part of the building, but it might come quicker, like Travis was saying, I think. It's just we had kind of held that towards the end piece. Because Jeff, you're not wrong. They are at capacity as it relates to the band, over capacity. But I would say could have that same conversation as I was in the band room here before school ended, and it was full left to right, front to back. I mean, so we have that, and they need that as well. So I mean, the need is there across.
Right.
It's just hard to make those decisions about. And remembering, as I just say this back up. Remember where we started, it was about classroom spaces and making sure we have room in classrooms for our kids that are coming. That was the conversation. Now I thought we've done you all as a board have done a really nice job prioritizing that. There's been a few other projects that have come in from that, and I think that, for example, video we saw tonight about all the activities that we have, those pieces are reflected in here too, the need for some of that.
So my question, I guess, so what needs to be, how detailed do we need to get on the phase approach tonight? Is it just?
Do you want to do all these projects? Is
Yes,
there anything else you want to do?
no, I mean, I'm speaking as myself.
Good dialogue. Yeah,
You're gonna have to make it.
yeah, no, so that's really it, like.
Yeah.
We want to do 50% on each of these of geosig and figure out the phases, and there's a couple of things we want to carve off and use with cash.
Yeah,
That's all you have to decide tonight. Before you get going very far, you're gonna want sequencing, and the result of this might be that. No, we need to create another phase sequence, that we have a phase 1, 2, and 3. That could be the result here, that you say. We need to research how we can make these phases fit with perhaps a third phase in the middle, which is what Garrett's kind of working on right now. You run out of cash a little bit, you'll be. Sequencing, moving it up 2 years is probably hard on that, but could you bid that in the summer of 26? One of those $7 million projects that are currently in phase 2, could you slide those up a year? Probably.
So back to your question, Andrew, I think it is really looking at, first and foremost, I think, we have what's listed here is phase one is the elementary school based on what's here. So is that where we are? You know, are we feeling good about the idea that the administration transportation hub, it's presented here that that would come out of cash, and that would be in phase one, because we know the one domino to the next situation. You know, the middle school entrance, you remember we talked about that being sooner than later because how important that is. It's all important, you guys know that. And then could the high school science and classrooms, yeah, could that take place in phase one? And then could we, you know, how do we feel about all those pieces? And then back to, I like what you said, Travis, about phase two. While we think of it as phase two, it might not be as far out as we think it is. Can we live with, at the moment, these other projects being in phase two? And maybe you want to say, okay, we can live with this in phase two, but the first thing that we'd like to see happen in phase two is the middle school band classroom comp. I mean, you know, like, we can say, this is the one we want. It doesn't matter where it is on the list. It's like, okay, this has to fall in phase two because of our capacity, but we want this to be first, or we want that to be first, or maybe it can all happen at the exact same time. I'm not sure, but that to me is the conversation that you all need to decide on.
Well, I'll kick it off and just say, I'm all for everything in phase one as it's listed here, except for the 6-lane track, I think needs to be in phase one as well. Just because I think we need to get that showing sooner than later. Now, if we can make those dollars work, great. If not, then I guess we can start shifting some other things, but I do think that needs to be in the first phase, right along with the elementary school for sure.
I would agree, and I think because if the intermediate stuff is staying in the second phase, we've got some, with the administration center, transportation hub, we've got a few, we don't know what the options are yet, but we've got some options where there's $3 million that we could potentially save or get creative with, you know, like a real lease or, you know, temporary type thing. Still keeping it in phase one right now for the purposes of planning, but knowing we can really do anything we want with that, we can just Christina, she'll work in a tent, I'm sure, if we nicely.
I don't know, it has to have air conditioning.
We can do that. Be on a cart there.
There you go.
Melissa, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the way it's set up is good. We have to do the track, admin and hub in order to get phase two, right? So-
Yeah, and it's nothing saying we couldn't, like we're talking, the middle school, you know, maybe specifically the band choir and some of those rooms. You can't do the gymnasium without doing anything else, but some of those, you know, the concerns expressed about not having enough room for band and choir, those could potentially be pieced in early. So potentially at the end of a phase one or something, you know, just depending on how it all rolls out, but we can keep that in the back of our mind as well. So it might be on paper as phase two, but could jump everything and be at the end of phase one.
Dollars make sense there, Travis, if we threw $2 more million into the phase one. Okay. Yeah.
So are you comfortable funding, take out the admin and transportation building? Are you comfortable including all of these projects in the GO bond petition and in the sales tax revenue bond petition? As Travis, I think, was saying, fund it 50-50, maybe. Obviously, your elementary is probably gonna have to be funded more with GO bonds, but.
I think the only thing, Beth, that you mentioned that potentially comes up here is the new 6-lane track in field north of the middle school. If that's funded in part by sales tax revenue bonds, it actually requires 2 public hearings.
Yes.
So that might be one that it makes sense to only include in the GO bonds. Beth, you agree there?
Oh, I definitely agree.
It just creates an extra complexity that's not necessary. I mean, if it was $30 million of the project, maybe you would go through it. It's a small component of the overall GO.
I'm only asking because I think by July, you should have your petition drafted so we can start circulating it. So we can get the resolution, calling the election probably at your August meeting, because that will have to be delivered to the controlling county auditor by September 22nd.
Okay.
And then your sales tax, if you're issuing sales tax revenue bonds, we need to get that. That's a 2-meeting process. So if you set the date of the public hearing in July, hold the public hearing in August, you have to wait 14 days. Anyone can file a petition requesting an election within 14 days of the public hearing. And that election can only be held in November. So you're on that same, we'd have to have time if you received a petition to adopt a resolution calling the election and deliver it by September 22nd. Just so you have a general feel for the timelines.
So again, we're all in agreement on the track being moved to a geobond. Is that, am I hearing that correctly too? All right.
Back to GO, and just as Travis has the admin and transport, it's cash.
Cash, yep, so that's gonna be will not be on the ballot.
Mhm.
I have a motion or,
So the last thing I'll
Yep.
just weigh in here real quick. You will have to pick a number for both of these. Sales tax hearing and GO bond.
okay,
Normally would say, well, we can calculate mathematically what the number is fairly simply. There are 5 years worth of assumptions on the GOs. So we do have to give a number that's reasonable that we think you can issue. However, we can stretch a year. We can push more onto what I'll call the GO bond ballot. We could also increase the sales tax hearing so that you have some flexibility on timing. So you might actually have GO authority and sales tax hearing authority greater than what you're actually going to do on the plan because your debt limit is going to constrain you. But it would give you some flexibility in the timing between the two. You know, we get a couple of years of bumper valuation growth, so we can sell more or GO bonds than we thought. Probably going to want to do that because that's a no tax increase. We're keeping the levy rate the same as we have in the past. You'll be rated your 405. It's just how many bonds and how many years you'll be paying for it. So right now that number would be about 30.3 million, but you could say, Travis, run a scenario math, figure out our assumptions that will allow us to do 34 million there, because we want to put 34 on the ballot. I mean, at this point, you're voting 54 million, so
yeah,
it's you're doing $54 million worth of project, so figuring out that split. Where we got this multi-phase approach, I'd probably advise you being conservative on both numbers and putting a slightly higher number, and then it'll break out rates in terms of. Maybe at the end of the day, we didn't sell as many sales tax bonds as we thought, maybe at the end of the day, we didn't sell as many GO bonds as we thought. So that'd be the only thing that I'd add there, so that it might be based on timing and when you want to do the projects. And when you have access to it. So that's the only thing we'll have there.
How is the construction of the elementary school gonna work with, since we don't own the other piece of land? Where is that at?
The conversation that we've had with the city is that they were completely open and their response and. Josh, you were with us at that meeting, was it wouldn't be a problem, but it was their exact words. They didn't
Yeah,
see.
don't worry about it.
Yeah, they were like, no, not an issue. So we, my intent is to put that in writing, that was the conversation at that meeting to send to them to make sure that we don't have any surprises. What they did say is that, and I had talked to Courtney already about this, is making sure we allow for soccer fields somewhere on the property, so those soccer fields don't go away, they just might be relocated. And Courtney thought we could do that.
Really bad time to talk about taking away soccer fields after you get state title. We're runner-ups.
We're not taking away soccer fields, Travis.
So Travis, something like 33 million for Geo and 22 million for save.
Yeah, and you can go a little bit higher too on the save. I don't know, Beth and I have. Have had run into so many of these where it's just easier to have additional authority, and if you use it, you use it, if you don't, you don't. Just let it be flexible for your financing plan, but. Yeah, those numbers would be realistic, and what I'll do is, we'll take these assumptions, maybe stretch out to the 29th year, 2029. So 2050 or whatever it is, and then run the sales tax at your capacity and come back with those numbers. You guys can consider. If you want to do something different, but yeah, that 33, 34 million range probably would be where I suggest would make sense. The only issue what we can issue, right, but this authority gives you some flexibility on timing.
If I could, I'd probably go up to 25 million. Only because, if you have cost overruns, you just need that little bit extra at the very end. You've already got the authority and you don't have to rehold a hearing. All politics are local, though. I don't know if that's too much for your community, but rather than do 22, I'd probably round up. I've had a lot of school districts that have to go back and hold another hearing on $1 or $2 million because bids came in too high.
Yeah, that's what we should have told CNBS to have earmuffs. We can't hear that bigger number.
Yeah, but it can't be too high because we can move it into phase 2.
What's that?
You can move it into phase 2.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be,
Won't be too high.
yeah, you're gonna be constrained by whatever your constraints are. You got multiple phases that will squeeze into, so this is just giving authority up front. So.
I mean, we'll want to be very open and have some public forums on what we're doing, right, for a total. But at the November election, assuming there's not a petition, which there's never been, but assuming there's not, it will only be the GO that's on there.
People that never hear what we say or hear what or see what the district puts out are gonna go and they're gonna pull up a ballot and see
33 or 34,
Yeah.
35. no.
intermediates,
Yeah, part of your communication is, we're using our sales tax resources so that we can do these projects. It's the same mantra that you had at the high school. You used your sales tax resources to get the high school when you did. If you wouldn't have, you wouldn't probably have a high school. I don't know if you'd ever have a high school. If you would have put, no, if you would have put the sales tax money in, I mean, if you're building that high school today, I mean, shudder to think about what.
I've always said that as a board, we need to stay together and I'll support you guys. I mean, I'm all about this. Making it better, but I think a couple things that bother me, it's obviously the middle school and you guys get that. The other thing that bothers me is that we're doing this pre-K school and we're doing it on because the city said so. Please lock that up with some legal interpretation or legal advice. Because we don't want to get out there and say have a place for a school and all of a sudden say, we don't have any place to build it. So then we move it to phase 2. Now we could, but then let's just make sure we legally have the land, build the primary school, PK2, and let's go do a good job at it.
I think that's a really good point, and it also goes beyond that land to the street.
Yeah.
We're gonna do some of these things up north, right?
Yep. So. This is a win, it makes the school better, and we don't spend, I was looking, I spent a bunch of time on it. We actually leave some money. For 10 years down the road, I told Tyler before, I said, there's no money left, well, there is money left, and because the valuation increases and stuff that I had to figure in, so.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about,
Go ahead.
you won't be out, right? Growth will happen, you'll get that paid off, we'll do what you've done. You'll have ability to do this, and funny part is, this process started 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Setting money aside for that future elementary, making sure we had bonding capacity, limiting what you did in your last round of projects so that you would still have the ability to do something with the elementary. So this is following through on a lot of board promises that you guys have kept.
So, do you have a motion? No. Go ahead.
Well, I'll move to accept the components as listed in Exhibit C with a geo bond target of 35 million and a save bond target of 25 million. To include all those items with the exception of the new admin center, the new transport hub, and to clarify that this 6-lane track would be only geo.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Travis, thank you. Beth, thank you very much for your time tonight. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yep.
Thank you, Courtney.
Jason, you got the,
Bye, guys. Thank you.
thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, the thing I'll add here is like, not every project has every detail worked out, like, those roads, those things, but. To have a signal by the time you get to your public information meetings about how you're handling those will be important. I've seen bond referendums fail for things stupider than a road extension, so. I think Jeff was wise there to caution that it'd be good to get as much information known, or at least that, hey, we talked with the city, they're willing to help negotiate, we'll figure out what this looks like, that'll go a long ways with the public, so. Good luck. I know this might be a little earlier than maybe you were hoping. March was, you had a little bit more time, but I think. You guys, anybody can do it, you guys can do it. So, you guys have other questions, I'll work on, or Garrett or I will work on getting those proofs. So we need to show Beth that you can have a pathway to issuing the debt on both. And then we'll go from there, so I don't think it'll be an issue.
Great. Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Travis.
guys. It's been a good time. All right, Patrick, you've been waiting patiently back there. Give us some facilities updates. Again, there's a report. And there are the notes here.
Thank you.
If I may just open this, so if you remember over a year ago, okay? Yeah, thank you. That's right. We worked with Patrick and DeNovo to take a look at our facilities and to create a plan. If you remember, it was putting a system in place and using that system with our maintenance and facilities. And so Patrick is back. He's done a nice job of working with the team to come back around and say, what have we done? Where are we? And how's the plan going to keep the plan alive? What I love about it is that it's not just a plan that came to us and went on the shelf. We're keeping it going, keeping it moving forward. So with that, Patrick.
Thanks. I'll keep this quick. You guys have been like up here with facilities, and this is kind of more diving into the weeds that actually came up pretty clear in the exhibit A from what Travis just handed out. So make sure that you're planning correctly for your maintenance things. So it kind of comes together pretty well. So like Christine said, about a year ago, I came to you guys, had a thick book full of stuff and handed that off. Came back a couple months ago. And these guys did a heck of a lot of work. So I was really surprised to see all the things that were done. It's really cool to see those things getting done. Brent and Dan kind of took that and let's do all these things. But with that also came the money with it, right? So you guys are spending, I think what Gail said was more money than you typically had on maintenance things for the last year, potentially planning on spending